Looking back on Iron Man's release over a decade ago, it's easy to forget that the film was very much an unknown quantity going into that year's summer blockbuster season. Back in 2008, the thought that a film about one of Marvel's B-tier characters could single-handedly change the film industry would surely sound like a bunch of nonsense. Hollywood was a different beast back then, and with the exception of the big guns such as Batman and Spider-Man, superhero movies were often still seen as second-class properties. Simply put, Iron Man changed all that, and would go on to become the gold standard for the massive potential and appeal that the superhero genre has the ability to provide. Ironically, the film that would eventually change the face of cinema in the coming decade would be predicated on a massive gamble that nearly put Marvel out of business entirely. You see, Marvel was in dire straits in the 1990s, to the point where they were essentially forced to license out the film rights to their most beloved characters just to stay in business. As the superhero film genre began to materialize in the early aughts, Marvel wanted a piece of the pie too, but didn't have the finances to be able to produce their own film content outright. So, the company struck a deal with finance giant Merrill Lynch for a loan of $525 million. In return, Marvel used the rights to nearly a dozen of the best characters that they still owned as collateral, including Captain America, Black Panther, the Avengers, and more. If the comics publisher had failed at the task of creating a successful, self-produced film, the MCU would have been dead before it could even begin. Fortunately for audiences, that wouldn't be the case. Like many other Marvel characters before the birth of the MCU, Tony Stark/Iron Man had been sold off nearly earlier to keep the company afloat. The property landed at Universal and then bounced from 20th Century Fox to New Line, where several failed attempts occurred to get the movie made. After a version of the movie that was supposed to be directed by Nick Cassavetes, you heard that right, failed to take flight, New Line then handed the rights back to Marvel in late 2005. In a stroke of luck, this happened right after the Merrill Lynch deal was finalized. As a result, the comic publisher seized the opportunity to make Iron Man their first self-produced film out of the gate. Now, all they needed to do was commission a script and, more importantly, hire the right director. In early 2006, that director came in the form of Jon Favreau, and the project was officially headed into pre-production. Favreau was someone who was much less of a known quantity than he is today, having just come off of Elf and Zathura. Ironically, it was Favreau's involvement in 2003's Daredevil that led him to befriend Avi Arad, which eventually got him the directing gig on Iron Man. Although his effects and comedy experience certainly were helpful, it was Favreau's independent background that ended up making Iron Man feel like a $200 million student film. Similarly, the choice to modernize Tony's origin proved to be a crucial element that Favreau brought to the table. Finally, there was the director's insistence on rooting all of the characters' technology in some sort of plausibility, while also showing the progression of the technology to make it more believable. While scripts were being written, the casting search began for what would eventually become Iron Man's unexpected coup de grace, Robert Downey Jr. Although Favreau originally intended to cast an unknown to play a younger version of the character, Downey soon became the director's only choice for the film. There was only one problem. The actor's off-screen troubles made the Marvel brass extremely hesitant. They believed that his image might destroy the film's box office prospects, and it's easy to see why, considering that Marvel's entire future was literally riding on this anything but safe casting choice. But the director stuck to his guns, feeling that Downey's off-screen troubles would be able to inform the character in unexpected ways. Not only was this the case, but Downey's arc of redemption ended up mirroring Tony's in the film, something that not even Favreau could have predicted. Despite all this, it was Favreau's insistence that eventually got Downey a screen test. The actor was cast, and the movie eventually went off into production. Even though many of the pieces that would lead to the film's overwhelming success were already in place, completing the actual production of Iron Man was no easy feat. Even though multiple versions of the script had been commissioned, the film entered production without a working shooting draft. As a result, Favreau and Downey improvised many of the scenes in the film to help achieve a more naturalistic style. Despite doubling down on an already massive gamble, it was this improvisational style that ended up leading to some of the film's best character moments. the saving grace of Downey and Favreau's collaboration. Against all odds, Iron Man completed filming on schedule in 2007, and their big gamble was looking to be much less so than ever before. But there was one crucial piece to the MCU puzzle that was still missing: Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury. In retrospect, it's easy to forget how crucial the decision to include Nick Fury's small post-credits cameo actually was.
Who the hell are you?
Nick Fury, director of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Oh.
I'm here to talk to you about the Avenger Initiative.
Had this not been included, the MCU might look much different because at the time, the superhero movies were largely standalone ventures. Now, it seems like a no-brainer, but back then it was the exact opposite of what people expected. In many ways, this late addition ended up becoming the turning point for the indoctrination of the MCU at large to the general public. It told audiences that this movie was just the tip of the iceberg, but it also framed Tony Stark as the linchpin of an entire cinematic universe, with Fury pulling the strings from the shadows. Conversely, the decision to include a Fury cameo in an Iron Man movie at all could have also completely backfired as a result. Things worked out differently, and to quote the character's now famous line, "We were part of a bigger universe. We just didn't know it yet." So, how did all of this seemingly anecdotal information become so crucial to the film's success? For one simple reason: the entire methodology of all the decisions that were made during the production of Iron Man would end up defining what makes these movies so unique. The willingness to swing for the fences with no remorse. Truth be told, the opening sequence of the film alone is indicative of how all of these crucial decisions came to shape the film as a whole. From the music by AC/DC to the narrative decisions, along with Tony's still hilarious introduction, all these elements told us that we were in for something special. Similarly, the film's closing sequence not only bucked the trend of secret identities in general, but it more importantly told us that there was more tie-in films to come from Marvel in the near future.
Truth is, I am Iron Man.
Looking back, film's opening and closing sequences are emblematic of the constant risk-taking that was involved with the making of Iron Man. This ended up being something that would permeate throughout every entry to follow, offering a grounded yet fun approach to the superhero genre that took itself just seriously enough. While Iron Man isn't a perfect film, it certainly is damn near close. Ultimately, however, Iron Man's greatest achievement still is that the film, like Superman nearly 30 years before it, made you believe a man could fly. If audiences believe a man can fly, they could believe anything in the newly born Marvel Cinematic Universe. And so it was. Thank you for watching.